Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a review of Stargirl Season 2. Now there will be spoilers throughout this review, so just beware. If you haven't caught up yet with all the episodes, you can catch up with them both on the CW network and also on Amazon, where Season 1 and Season 2 are currently available. You can also check out on my previous reviews of Stargirl, in particular Season 1 and certain standout episodes, and I will leave some links within the description as well. So previously, we go to the end of Season 1 of the story, and Stargirl and Justice Society had successfully defeated the Injustice Society, with Icicle being killed by Mike when he was run over within the street. And at the end of the episode, we saw hints of the main villains to be throughout this second season, in the form of both Eclipso and Shade. And Season 2 is very much involved primarily with the main fight against Eclipso, a well-known DC Comics villain for having the ability to play on people's fears and paranoia, bringing out their most darker tendencies and desires. He was defeated previously, and through connecting with Cindy, as we saw at the end of Season 1 finale, he looks to exact revenge on the new Justice Society. And we see Eclipso impacting the team to attack them as they work out through their own personal dilemmas. We see Yolandi, who has PTSD experiences following her encounter with Brainwave Jr., and she questions her ability to do the absolute necessary in order to defeat Eclipso, and she leaves the team for a short while halfway through the season. Beth constantly tries to reconnect with the Dr. Midnight AI, but also has to deal with the sudden revelation that her parents are getting divorced. Rick is on the trail to find Grundy, who he battled very furiously in the Season 1 finale, and through Eclipso's machinations, he ends up brutally assaulting his uncle, putting him in hospital, and gets sent to jail. Courtney herself struggles to maintain her college life with her role as Stargirl, and this results in her being kept behind in summer school as per their title throughout this second season. We see Pat struggling to withhold certain secrets and revelations about the old Justice Society, and we get some fascinating flashbacks into the previous Justice Society team and the hard choices that they had to make in order to kill Eclipso. This causes Pat to reveal to Courtney in time the various lengths that they had to go in order to kill Eclipso, and this causes initial tensions between both of them. We see Mike desperately willing to join the Justice Society to try and play a more key role without the team. This leads to him making certain rash decisions that certainly puts the team in danger. Now, in terms of newer characters, we see the introduction of Slade, who's much more of a secondary villain, to be honest with you. He has the ability to manipulate shadowy forces, and in the beginning he becomes much more of a main threat to the Justice team. He initially wants to aid the team to stop Eclipso, but ends up wanting to use Eclipso for his own gains, and throughout the story he really has much more of a duplicitous role throughout the season. We see the introduction of Thunderbolt, a genie-like spirit that garners any wish of its master that controls him. And what was probably the most exciting aspect in terms of newer characters that got DC fans talking the most was, of course, the introduction of Jennie Scott as the Green Lantern's daughter. She's in the story for the beginning part. She ventures away for a short while, and then she reunites with the team later on in the overall fight against Eclipso. Now, overall, Season 2 of Stargirl turned out to be even superior than the first. This season proved to be so compelling and intense, and actually was even more darker and scarier, especially when you consider the show had such a bright, optimistic tone in the beginning half of its first season. A lot of this darker direction is down to Eclipso himself and how well the villain was portrayed. Just like the three villains in Season 1, Eclipso is very much of an imposing and powerful villain, and the show did so well in suspensefully building up his overall threat and appearance, which we saw revealed finally in the standout episode, Episode 6, where we see a fantastic epic fight between both the Justice Society and the newly recruited Injustice team formed together by Cindy. It truly is a spectacular episode where they really pushed the limits of the budget, where we see the Justice and Injustice team performing various maneuvers and kicks and punches within the summer school itself. Fantastic choreography, and I think a major improvement as well throughout the season was how much more well staged the fight sequences were. I mentioned in Season 1 that an issue was that so many of the fight scenes took place in such a darkened filter, it was very hard to make out what was going on. But very gladly, they seem to have sorted out that problem throughout Season 2. We then see Eclipso tear the team apart much more of an internal fashion in different ways as such, and this is what makes him such a scary and effective villain. Now, overall, we saw two main forms of Eclipso. We saw the main almost mutant monster type that was played by experienced actor Nick Taraby, but for me, an actually more scarier iteration was the childlike version of Eclipso that we saw in the beginning part of season 2, and he played a role right throughout the second season. And I just think this was a way of the showrunners to save budget, having this much more of a child manifestation of the character. And I have to say, the child actor who played this version of Eclipso did a marvelous job, really being even more scarier than when we saw Eclipso in his final form. Now, what made season 2 so strong is that it actually keeps the narrative focus on Eclipso himself and how it affects each of the Justice Society. Making all of their issues tied to Eclipso, this keeps everybody relevant to the show. Now, a mistake that I've seen so often within the other CW superhero shows is that when they focus on the other supporting characters, they create side plots for them, and this takes away much from the central story. But Stargirl avoids this trap, and it helps you keep engaged for the story throughout the entire season. Now, because of this storytelling choice, it really gave all of the main characters their own time to shine. Now, the most standout elements in particular was seeing Yolandi facing her own demons. We had those very intense scenes where we see her visiting the priest and trying to get over her killing Brainwave Jr. and really questioning her own motivation and whether she has a right to be on the same team as the other members. In my review of season 1, I mentioned how significant that Luke Wilson was in terms of Pat, and I think this is the same result here. He really remains the conscious and the mentor throughout the team, and it's played in such a relaxed fashion by Luke Wilson, and he really does appeal you so much to the character. At the same time, he wants to protect the younger heroes, but he also realises that he's got to push them in order for them to utilise their own potential. And it's a great performance once again from Luke Wilson within the role. I also like the episode where we see the Shadowlands, where initially Cindy got sent down to them by Eclipso, and then later on we see Courtney also suffer the same fate. And we really spent almost an entire episode where Courtney is trying to rescue Cindy after they fight against Eclipso. And this episode was filmed mostly in black and white. I think it's around the 11th episode. And it's such a vivid and atmospheric installment. Really another standout episode, and really crediting so much the show and how much they really take their time to focus on each character's dilemma. Now, there were very few complaints or issues that I had, particularly in this second season. One was perhaps you could say that Shade really felt less threatening as a secondary villain. He starts off very well, particularly I believe it's the 3rd or 4th episode where we see the Justice Society come up against him at a dinner table, and they really showcase how much powerful he is, but he kind of gets sidelined as we shift the focus much more to Eclipso, and then he comes later in the end much more as an ally as opposed to an enemy. And I just felt it kind of took away the real imposing presence of Shade that what we had with Eclipso and also what we had with the previous 3 villains from season 1. Now, the finale itself, while suitably spectacular, felt a little bit short-lived for me. After all of the great build-up throughout the season, where we really did such a great effort to establish Eclipso as this truly menacing threat, he seemed to be beaten just a bit too easily. We get a lot of these Deus Ex Machina moments where all of a sudden we see all of these other characters popping out of nowhere to join in the fight. So we see later on Grundy come to the battle, Thunderbolt, and also Courtney's father, the first Stuntman, and they all come in at last minute during the battle, and all of a sudden you have around 8 to 10 characters fighting Eclipso on his own. And I think as a result this really took away a lot of the threat level of Eclipso, and it was a bit of a disappointing factor. Now, I do understand that the showrunners, when they write this material, they really want to wrap up the season finale as a whole contained episode. They don't really do cliffhangers as what we see with the other CW shows, but I really think this finale would have been far better served if they had really just lengthened out the struggle against Eclipso and really left on an intense note to get us really anticipated for season 3. Another aspect of wrapping things up too quickly was the whole Beth's parents' divorce. Now, this was such a big issue that they established throughout the earlier parts of the season, and again it added a lot of depth and weight to Beth in the fact that she was really fighting 2 dilemmas in terms of reconnecting with Dr. Midnight and also really struggling to come to the fact that her seemingly perfect family life was really tearing itself apart, and this gave a lot of weight and emotional resonance to the character. But at the end they just make up at the end, and they tie it to the fact that seeing Beth as a superhero, because she reveals that she was indeed controlling the Dr. Midnight AI, that was the kind of spark to make themselves fall back in love in one another. That wasn't very convincing, and I think they could have done a far better job in trying to establish that at the very least her parents were trying to figure things out, but it was going to take a lot more longer before they fully came back together. I think that would have been the better choice to make without this overall episode. But just to try and neatly tie everything back up together, it just felt the finale came across as a bit weightless. I just think it could have had far more impact. And to be honest, the battle with Eclipso resolved so quickly, it almost seems that the writers were more concerned in setting up elements for season 3. So initially we had the conversation between Cindy and Yolanda, where Cindy states her intent to join the JSA, so that'll provide a very interesting dynamic. Will the other members be as forgiving as what Courtney was? And how will Cindy's more ruthless approach mix in with the other members of the team? We see that Shade states his own intent to stick around, so we'll see if he has a far more prominent role throughout season 3. Will we see another duplicitous turn, or will we eventually see him become much more of a hero character without season 3? We get further hints that Cameron will indeed be taken over from his father in a new Icicle role, where his grandparents finally reveal the truth about him and his initial father. This was hinted at the start of the second season, and I'm glad that they kind of left this, because I think it would have been too much of a strong narrative to really interfere with the main Eclipso narrative. So this is something again that they can leave dangling for season 3. We of course saw the revelation and reveal of Courtney's father coming in the final battle against Eclipso, and then we see that final shot where he comes in an effort to reconnect with her and wanting to teach her more. So this will be an interesting dynamic, because he will obviously want to play a far more role in Courtney's life, and will that cause tension between Pat, who of course has been looking after Courtney for a lot of his life. Now of course this was the original arrangement between him and Starman if you go back to the season 1 finale, but now that he's back, will this cause more tension? Because Starman, it is hinted, will want to see Courtney develop her skills as Stargirl, and as we all know, Pat really wants to have Courtney come away from her superhero life to protect her and focus far more on her college life. So very interesting dynamics to see play out through season 3. We also saw the arrival of Tigress and Sportsmaster at Courtney's house for dinner, indicating some sort of future alliance, and this was confirmed very much so by the season 3 title card, Stargirl Frenemy. So this will be very interesting to see how exactly that dynamic plays out. I'm pretty much sure, like season 2 against Eclipso, we'll see some sort of narrative where they have to unite with the others to take on the villain for season 3. And then of course, concerning the season 3 villain, we got the final reveal, and I think his name is Mr. Bones. He's a DC characters or DC Comics supervillain. He had very much of a Nazi style suit with a pink skull, and he was voiced by acclaimed actor Keith David. So to be honest with you, I don't really know anything about this character, but I'm sure he'll be every bit as compelling a villain as what we saw with the villains from the previous 2 seasons as well. So if I had to give an overall score for Stargirl Season 2, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it was indeed superior to the first season, much more scarier, darker, more intense, but at the same time it didn't abandon its characters, and it made sure that each of the main characters for the whole season had a prominent and pivotal role to play throughout this season. Also coupled with the fact that we had again a compelling villain in Eclipso that really elevated the storytelling and made the season compelling throughout. And overall, I think Stargirl has now, with its second season, confirms that it's without question one of the best and most compelling superhero films or superhero series currently out there. I would actually put it on par with Superman and Lois as the best CW show, and I think a lot of the other CW superhero shows could learn indeed from Stargirl, particularly the fact now that it's confirmed in its second season, which is always harder than the first season to confirm how good you are, but Stargirl has done that very much so. So a very strong second season for the show, and without doubt one of the strongest superhero shows out there as well. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings and review of Stargirl Season 2. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this is indeed the best CW superhero show, or do you think that title is reserved for Superman and Lois? Let me know what you think in the comments. Please also hit those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.